Hey everyone, it is Professor Lee, and this is your Chapter 27 Quick Things to Know overview. So we start up here at the top left-hand corner, and then we're going to work our way over and then down. So the basics for CPT modifiers that you need to know. There are two different kinds of codes, two types of modifiers that are used with CPT codes. The first one is level 1. Those are CPT modifiers. They are 2-digit numeric codes. The next level is level 2. Those are HCPCS or HCPCS modifiers, and those are 2-digit alphanumeric modifiers. So level 1 only has numbers, level 2 has letters and numbers. So the best place to find out what all of those modifiers are and what they mean is to look in the appendices. So there's a couple of different appendices in the back. The one that you will probably use the most often is Appendix A in the CPT manual, so make sure you check that out. Now there are a couple of others back there. I think they go all the way through E last time I looked, so you can look at the rest of those as well, but definitely check out Appendix A. So if you're asking why it is that we use modifiers for our CPT codes, there are a number of reasons. So we could use them, most of the time it's because the procedure needs more detail, and that could be because a service or a procedure had both a technical and professional component, could be because a service or procedure was performed by more than one physician, it could be because it was performed in more than one location. It could be because a service or procedure has taken more time to complete than it would routinely occur. So, for instance, somebody goes in and they're in for an appendectomy, and it usually only takes 20 minutes in the operating room to take out that appendix and then close and have them back in recovery. So if for some reason something happened and it was a complicated case and it took them an hour to get that appendix out, then we would use a modifier for that situation. We also would use a modifier for any service or procedure that was reduced or increased. We would use one if only part of a procedure was completed, if a bilateral procedure was performed, if a service or procedure had been completed multiple times, we would use a modifier for that. And then also too, if there was any unusual event that occurred during the procedure, and that's actually the last bubble over here. So if there were some strange things happening during the procedure that are atypical or were not foreseen, then we would use modifiers in that case as well. We also use modifiers to help us follow Medicare rules. Now those are commonly used with the HCPCS codes, but we do need to make sure that we are following the Medicare rules from CMS, which is the Center for Medicare Services, because they have very specific ways that we can use modifiers in order to bill and have Medicare coverage for those services. So there's a lot more information about that in the chapter when you read it, but that is one key point that you need to take note of when you're making your own lecture map or writing out your own notes. Okay, so down here at the bottom we move along to payment. So things to know about modifiers and payments. Some of the modifiers will affect the payment. Some of them are just for information. So sometimes modifiers can be, multiple modifiers can be affixed to one code. So a code can have up to 4 modifiers. And the thing that's important to remember when you have multiple modifiers is that you want to make sure that you rank those right behind the code and level of importance. So as far as modifiers go, the most important thing that we want to consider is whether or not that modifier is going to directly affect the fee for a service. So if it is going to affect the fee, then those need to be reported directly after the CPT code. So they would be ranked the highest, and then you just kind of go down the list. So that is the ranking key point. And then our last key point section is documentation. So anytime we are going to use a modifier for any reason, we have to have supporting information in the documentation or in the patient's chart. So we cannot use a modifier on a CPT code, nor can you use a CPT code for something that isn't supported by the information that is contained in that patient's chart. If you code for a bilateral mastectomy, then there needs to be documentation in that patient's chart that both the right and the left breast were removed because you're using that bilateral modifier. You want to always make sure that you use the most appropriate modifier, and so that's why it's important to kind of dig into that appendices and figure out which ones are important. If you are putting a modifier on an E&M code, then you want to use one of the E&M modifiers so that you're not coding with a modifier from a different section of the manual. You want to, if you're, for instance, coding with a surgical modifier or a, I don't know, for instance, a reference lab modifier, then you want to make sure that you are using the most appropriate modifier from that specific section within the modifiers chapter. Alright, so that is your very quick key point lecture for chapter 27. Definitely download the slides, read through those, check out the supplemental information, and let me know if you have questions.